Welcome back, crew. It's May, and we are diving into the super heroic Champions Complete 6E system by Hero Games. And today we're going to be breaking out the core non combat mechanics of the system so you'll know how to make success rolls, how movement impacts your hero, and just the core pieces of playing the non combat version of the Champions 6E game. Then definitely stay tuned for this Wednesday. We'll be diving into the mechanics portions, showing you how to have a super heroic beatdown utilizing the champions rule set. Also, unfortunately, I do want to make an announcement. We will not be able to have our May 25th live actual play of the Champions Heroic system. Unfortunately, wasn't able to coordinate my player schedules. We didn't have enough people to run through one. Well, what I do want to do is kind of reach out to the community. I'd love to join a Champions one shot for the 6E version to see how it's played and just get that real live table experience for it. So if anybody does have either a one shot or if they wouldn't mind me guest starring in their campaign, I would love to come through and just kind of see how this system plays and get that live experience. So drop it in the comment, or if you want to email me directly as well, you can email me at tnjgaming@gmail.com. All one word, no special characters, and I'll throw a link to it in the description too. I'd love to join the game, and preferably if you guys are comfortable with it, I'd love to stream it. But if not, definitely happy just to play in it, just to see how everything works, just so I can get a good feel of the game. One of my big rules for the channel is I can't review a game that I haven't played, and I definitely want to make sure we get a cool Champions review out there too. So would definitely appreciate if somebody would let me come through and definitely at me, email me, whichever you prefer. If you do have a game, I can jump in. Yeah, let's dive into the core mechanics of the system. So we're going to be going over the big pieces, success rules, how movement works, and a little bit on perception for the Champion 6E system, just so you know if you get into a game, how to make your rules, how to have your hero get into their heroic deeds, and how the movement options have some kind of interesting mechanical rules about them, how they function, and how each different movement style has a little bit of a difference to them. So let's jump into it. The first thing we're going to touch on is the two types of rolls you make with the system. Like 80% of your rolls are going to be success rolls. That's going to be kind of the bread and butter of the system. Success rolls include like characteristic rolls, skill rolls, attack rolls. All of these have kind of a similar function with just different types of applications. So for a success roll, you're going to roll 3d6, lower being better. So if you get three ones, that's actually a good thing. That's an automatic success. Converts three sixes, automatic failure. And with that, you're going to have a target number for each of the different skills you're trying to roll, or if you're making an attack roll, for the attack roll to hit. Typically, that target number is going to be plus minus. And let's say, for instance, you're rolling a skill that has eight. So it's going to be eight minus, which means eight or less will equal a success. So with those 3d6, you're going to roll those. And let's say you get a two, and a one. That's five. That's below your eight. So that'd be a success. They also recommend doing degrees of success too. So if you got like a three, maybe you got three ones, maybe something extra good would happen with that. On the flip side, let's say you get a six, and a five. That's going to be 17, so you're going to be failing that by a decent amount. So there could be some additional failure with those degree options that come to your PC. So fairly simple there. Attack rules, we're going to do that in our next video. They're a little bit different and modified compared to those, but something to keep in mind there. So there's more to go on skill rolls or success rolls, I should say. We're going to go to the skill section and break down a few pieces there. But before we move on, I do want to touch on effect rolls. So effect rolls are typically going to be utilized for damage. And basically, you're going to be rolling the number of d6 next to whatever effect you're doing. So with our guy, we built for the Emerald Nova earlier. I think we gave him 5 ranks of damage in his Solar Blast. So he'd roll 5d6 if he hit for his damage on that side. So typically it's going to be for damage, but other things can apply too for the effect rolls, and you just roll however many d6 it is and total up the number and figure out what happens from there. So now that we've got that portion in, let's dive into skill rolls and success rolls a little bit deeper because it can be modified by a couple of big pieces here. So we're going to touch on the skill roll table. For typical skills, this is how it's going to function. So let's say you put how many points or how much dedication you put into the skill. Typically, you're going to start at the 8 minus if you've put enough points to be familiar in it. It's going to kind of go on down from there. And the more you put into it, the more likely you're going to have success on that. So it just makes life easier. So you see, it goes from familiar all the way up to incredibly skilled, which 20 or more, unless you have some heavy circumstance penalties, which we're going to go into next. Pretty hard to fail those outside of getting three sixes, which is an automatic failure, even though three sixes only equals 18. Just remember that as you go through. Uh, there's other types of skills that may be affected by the rolls. So this kind of chart works easy for characteristic rolls because those ones are typically not going to be tied to a particular skill. So those ones are always going to be that 3d6, meet your target number. But other skills may be tied to a different characteristic. Let me scroll up a little bit and show them. So let's pick on one of these. We're going to pick on the agility skills. So these are tied to dexterity. With that, you're going to have your same 3d6. You're going to have your same target number, or kind of similar target number, but what this is going to be, if you're proficient or bought in with that initial 3 CP, you're going to have a base skill roll of 9 plus your dex or less. So with that, so let's say you've got 9, that initial one, and then you've got a dex of, let's make it easy for me with quick numbers. Let's say you've got a dex of 15. You're going to divide that 15 by 5. So it's going to give you 3. So it's going to be 9 plus 3, which would be 12. And you're going to roll that 3d6, and 12 or less will be a success. Pretty easy on that side. And then if you buy additional skill points in there, you could add +1 to that number. So go up to 13, 14, 15, so on, following that table we looked at over here on the pages. And those are same for, we picked on dex as the skill, but for the agility skills, but that's the same for the intellect skills and the presence skills as well. You basically just go divide them by the number they say, and that'll be your or less number that you have to roll under. So pretty straightforward on that side. It's always going to be 3d6. You have to keep track of where you're at and what type of skill you're utilizing on kind of what you're going to be subtracting that 3d6 from, or where you're going to be utilizing that 3d6 and kind of where you need to be beneath. So keeps it easy on that side. That's just kind of a quick look at the skill rolls. I know it's a little bit different than some other systems do so. Throw any questions you guys have in the comments on that side, but basically it's just 3d6 and rolling less than that target number. When you kind of break it down to that, it makes it simple. At least it made it simple for me as we were going through, just to make sure I'm keeping track of everything and know where it's at. So now we've got the skill section done. We're going to be going over some of the core mechanics of your character in the world. And I think one of the big things is movement, because movement's kind of like they get pretty intricate here. And we're going to be taking a look at just the non-combat section of movement. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the combat side. We're going to cover that in our next video. But today we're going to be just looking at the non-combat portion. So, big thing, especially if you're coming from a lot of the other systems, this, movement, speed, and all of that is going to be based in meters. With your average turn length being 12 seconds, a little bit longer than typical if you're used to 5e Pathfinder, a lot of those OG systems. So 12 seconds is the base for this if you're in combat, or even for non-combat if you're doing something that just involves the turns being broken out. So with this, your movement, you have the base movement for your typical skills like running, swimming, um, jumping, all of those you kind of start with them unless you sell them back. So you'll have those base skills, but let's say you did like we did with Emerald Nova and you bought into speed for your flying, you'll have that flying speed. So we bought 30 ranks for him, so he has a 30 flying speed of 30 meters. Nice thing with this is that flying speed is his speed in combat. If he's out of combat, you double your movement speed. So his 30 meters would change to 60 meters out of combat. But what that also does is it brings your offense combat value down to 0 and halves your defensive combat value if you're utilizing that full double movement out of combat flight speed. So, with that, we're going to go into a couple of things that affect your flight speed or your overall movement speeds as well. This will apply to leaping, jumping, all of that. Because one of the cool things they do on the side is they get really kind of into it, a little bit of crunch there. They get into the acceleration, deceleration, and gravity as kind of being a part of everything. So, with this, uh, let's say you were flying up in the speed, flying up in in the sky, you're going to be building speed, building velocity. And the way you build velocity with this is every 5 meters you or sorry, every meter you move, you gain 5 meters of velocity, and you have to kind of keep track of that as you're moving. Because if you want to stop moving, you're going to need to bring that velocity down, and you can do so while you're kind of interchangeably as you're moving. Now, with this, one thing I want to mention, because it confused me a little bit, but I was able to figure out into the rules. If you have one movement, or kind of if your movement can get you there where you need to go and have you stop, you can do both your acceleration and deceleration all within that one movement. But now it's something to keep in mind, though, if you're going to be doing movement for multiple turns and kind of building up that velocity, you're going to have to work to bring that velocity back down. So that's just a little bit different, a little bit kind of something a little. I haven't seen that before in the system. It's kind of cool. It brings that realism in there, and you can do some fun things with velocity too. One big thing that you can do with this, and we're going to get into moving stuff later, but they actually have gravity rules in there too. So if you're leaping or jumping or flying straight up, uh, that is going to take you double movement. Even if you're kind of going at a little bit of an angle too, whenever you go up in altitude, it's going to cost you twice the movement because gravity is going to be weighing you down. Cool thing, especially if you're going to be doing like kind of flying straight down, do that Superman tackle, you get to double your movement speed because gravity is pushing you along. So for our guy with his 30 movement speed, if he's going straight up, he'd have 15 meters per round. If he is going straight down, he'd have 60 meters per round. Then outside of combat, that'd bump up to 120 due to the double speed. So that's cool there. But one of the other things too is you can utilize your movement to add to your strength with lifting stuff. So like if you're a hero that may not be super strong, but you can fly real fast or move really fast, you can add for every 4 meters you move before kind of getting to the lifting target, you could add 1 plus 1 to your strength. And we went through with the Emerald Nova and showed that strength table. So you can kind of add that additional bonus there as you're going. So, like, say with our guy, we can move 30 meters per round. Will be don't do math on stream. But we could get a good bonus to our strength on that side. Just to really kind of get a good heft for our guy. So that'd be just kind of a good way to really kind of show the realism there. Kind of get if you don't need to have a whole bunch of strength for your character, especially if you're gonna be moving fast, you can build up that speed and lift and make sure you're getting some good lift there too. On top of that, they've got different rules for colliding with stuff as well as dragging things. But we're not going to go into that in this video. The other big pieces too they touch on are like the different modes of transportation and kind of things that affect them. So like running is typically the standard mode. Typically nothing applies there unless you're on treacherous terrain where the game master can put rules on turning. Kind of same thing for leaping. You're not able to really turn and leap after you're in the air. Swimming, one of the big things they have with this one, there's no turn mode on swimming. But if you don't have the swim speed, you can't stay afloat. So, or at least have the swim speed of 2 meters, you won't stay afloat and you will start to sink. Flight, you actually have to keep track of turn mode while you're flying. And with that, it's going to be total distance traveled this phase, so this turn, divide by 5. So if we went 30 mile or 30 meters for our guy, we would divide that by 5. And that would be our current turn mode would equal 6 for how often you could do that 60-degree turn. So keeps it pretty simple on that side. Other ones, it goes over teleportation, and if you teleport into stuff, what type of damage you'll take. It kind of gives you different rolls on that side too. So if you roll a 12 there, you could be doing 1d6 of killing damage. If you roll a 2 through 7, it'd just be stun damage, and then normal damage on 8 through 11. Damages, we're going to break those out during our combat video, so stay tuned for those too. So I like that. It goes over some of the other ones too. I think those are the big ones. We get vehicle movement. It gave you swinging if you want to get your Spider-Man on, as well as mounted movement too. But yeah, we'll kind of bemoan that subject there. The last big thing we're going to cover with this video is how they break out senses. So you got two types of senses with this system. You've got targeting senses, which for your average human would just be like your sense of sight. And then you've got non-targeting systems, which would be like your sense of smell or your sense of hearing. Uh, you can kind of use this to know where the general sense of somebody is, but won't give you that precise lock like seeing somebody would. Now they say that for it's for a baseline human. you could definitely build a PC that maybe has superheroic hearing. You could use it as a targeting sense, or maybe even a superheroic sense of smell. You could use that too. The other two that are either are not included in either your non-targeting or targeting senses are as well as taste, because those ones are you have to be usually pretty close to do so. So those ones just are kind of excluded from those two categories. Other cool things with this too, they've got sense group tables where you kind of go over your mental senses. If you got telepathy, you can kind of mentally scan the area, or kind of your sight groups, as well as going over how many CP you gain from lacking normal senses. So if you wanted to sell back your hearing, you get 25 CP. If you wanted to sell back your sight, 35, and so on and so forth. Cool thing with that too is if you wanted to have like a guy that was hard of hearing or deaf in one ear, blind in one eye, rather than selling back those, you can do a complications and kind of get some complication points. So like 15 deaf in one ear, 15 complication points, and you get a -3 to hearing perception rolls. Keeps it pretty simple on that side. Uh, and with these senses, they're usually going to be baked into one of your perception rolls, which you'll usually have skills for, and those skills can be tied to one of your senses or can be tied overall as well. But yeah, this was just kind of a quick run through of the kind of the basic how to do the success rolls and some of the big factors that may factor into those, kind of with either movement or the perception senses. It's kind of a quick and dirty run through of that side. Definitely for any of the Champion 60s aficionados, let me know some of your favorite non-combat skill rolls or kind of non-combat mechanics, I should say, that we didn't get a chance to touch on today. But also, make sure to stay tuned for our combat video. I'm looking forward to that one. We're going to be utilizing our Emerald Novas, kind of our baseline, and we're going to go over some of the core pieces of the combat side of Champion 60, and that should be out this Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. But definitely like, subscribe. We're going to be diving in mechanics, and if for sure, if you do have a one shot for Champion 60, I can jump into. Let me know. I'd love to get a chance to play this system live at the table, and be more than appreciative to be a part of your crew for that. But overall, thank you guys for hanging out, and till next time.